Hi, my name is Debora Giannone, and I went through the NXIVM cult. My parents are both from the south of Italy, but I was born in Switzerland. I felt from a very young age that I was too much, too loud, couldn't really fit in. I was 3.5 years old and I was begging my mom to take me to the zoo, and she wouldn't. So I took my tricycle and took off, and I actually almost made it. That's kind of like my character, I think. It's somebody who really, okay, you don't want to do it, I'm going to do it. And not going to wait. And I think through all I've been through, thank God that stayed with me. I have a sister who's 7 years older. So I felt like I was growing up like an only child. And my sister and I are very different. I'm an artist, she's a lawyer. My parents, they divorced when I was 12, which was really heavy because there was like domestic violence. I wanted to be an actor, so I got an artist visa and we moved here. And I went to school for 2 years, and LA is a ride, as we know, everybody knows. It's a tough city. Right out of school, I had some commercials and some feature films, some big auditions, didn't get them. And then, NXIVM happened. The trigger that really led me finally to say yes to NXIVM was because I felt very lonely. I had some friends, but I felt like I didn't have my roots. And all of that childhood trauma was bubbling up. And I was really depressed and sad. And I had a really good friend at the time who enrolled me into ESP. And he tried to enroll me for years. One night he said to me, I have a solution for you. Why don't you take it? How about you talk to Mark Vicente? And Mark is a filmmaker, and Mark co-created What the Bleep Do We Know? So for me, meeting the creator of What the Bleep Do We Know, coming from Europe to here, I was like, oh my God, I was so moved. NXIVM is basically, or was, a personal development group. And it was a lot about, achieving your goals and overcoming trauma. And we had personal development classes. They would always talk about the fact that, well, if everybody was at peace with themselves and could access their gifts and actually succeed, there would be no war. Peaceful people don't, and successful people and fulfilled people don't hurt other people. What I really liked about NXIVM was the shame was not so deep about having issues or struggling. I would still work my day job. Nothing really changed in that way, but I felt like I had a community of people who understand what I'm going through. Now looking back, I didn't really pursue my goals that much, to be honest. It was more about internal work, which was cool. The retreat was my turning point. I was taking classes 2 years in, and Mark called me and said, you have to come to Wee Week. It's the thing. It's so much fun. It's like summer camp for adults because it's on Lake George in upstate New York. It's beautiful. And I was like, I don't want to spend money. And he's like, okay, you can do a trade. You can be a photographer. Because I was forced behind the camera, I got a little bit of a different perspective. I started to see the control. They talked a lot about fair exchange and to own your worth and own your value. So when you do something, you should really ask what you want because that's a fair exchange and you'll feel better. You're not resentful. So I got a room and I had to shoot 6 hours a day as a photographer, and they wanted me to edit them. So I went up and I said, that's not a fair exchange. And they were so upset. They're like, you're so entitled. You need to work on your entitlement. You're so defiant. Hold on. You're telling me to learn this, but you're not practicing what you're preaching. So another thing that happened at Wee Week was we had Jeunesse. Jeunesse was specifically a women's group. I raised my hand and Nancy was there. Nancy was Keith's right-hand side. And I asked her, I have a hard time finding a man, and men always tell me that I'm too masculine. And then she literally yelled at me in front of everybody and said, yeah, because you walk around like a big this through life. And this woman met me once. I met Keith at Wee Week, and everybody was always like, oh my God, it's Keith, right? Pumping him up. And people were like, oh my God, he talked to you. And anyway, I never forget how we sat down and I just looked him in the eyes, and I just got cold. I got really cold. And we had conversations, and then he said, do you want to talk privately on Skype sometimes? And I said yes, but I never did it. Something inside of me is like, no, I actually don't want to talk to this man. After Wee Week, I was already turned off. A lot changed within me, and I was like, I don't think I want to do ESP anymore. And so I stopped those 2 classes a week because I told them, well, I don't see any progress in what I'm doing. They're like, well, you should take this program. This is more about the emotional things. And I think that would really help you. And I was like, okay. I had a neighbor who basically sent me very sexually harassing texts in the middle of the night, or come to my door and like, you want to go, really disgusting things. And I got scared. When you do ESP, you get a personal coach that talks to you once a week. I told my coach at the time that, and I was like, hey, can I sleep at your house? I'm a little scared this weekend. And she's like, sure, I'll come into town. And she asked me how I was doing. And she said, well, I have a new thing I want to propose to you. And it's a very special group. And it's only for women who really want to get to the next level. But I can't tell you until you give me something damaging about yourself. And I looked at her and I said, well, has this anything to do with ESP? And she said no. I just knew instinctively, this is very off. We went to her apartment and she kept talking about Keith, and talking about him and how amazing he is. I went to bed and she was on the phone the whole night. And then the next day, so I was washing my hands and then a text comes in and I just looked down. It said, I love you, my master. And I was like, what is that? And that was my coach's answer to her. After that and seeing the text in the bathroom, and I was like, I'm done. Did I ever feel like I was in a cult? Yes and no. I feel yes, because I started to think the way they wanted you to think. You start using certain words in ESP that you learn because we had a certain lingo that you start to adapt. I was definitely allowed to have friends on the outside. And also they knew that I have my own character, my own head. So I think their way of talking to me was very different, because Keith would teach like, women are monogamous and men are polyamorous. Like women are lazy, women don't want to do anything, women don't know how to earn anything, women are defiant princesses. And I was like, that's not my mom. That's not how I grew up. My mom worked off. So I had a huge issue with this portrayal of women. My sister and my parents were not really part of my life during the NXIVM time. We were not on good terms. I was going through this by myself. They didn't know anything. I was very numb and I was very much in denial. I was like, I wasn't in a cult. If the abuse is not like up here, then it doesn't matter. So I'm not allowed to like even share that it actually did something with me. It took me like at least a year or two, this was weird. And later in the courtroom, that's when it hit me. I just repeated my childhood in a different way. That's when it started. My self-love journey, I think, really started. Mother Nature taking me in, and I would go on hikes every day, because it was literally right out my door. And then a year into the canyon, I got a dog, and that dog really helped me. I love that dog. I'm getting so emotional, sorry. I love it. He just came at the right time. And I just walked and walked and walked and really was able to have the space to feel. Sometimes you wish that you are heard and seen and felt by somebody else, but I really had that with myself and nature and the dog. And I think that was the best thing that could have happened at the time. And then when I started shooting Seduced, I did some therapy as, we got approached for shooting Seduced. And even then, I feel like I was not fully open to talk about it. Why did I even choose to go forward with this? It's because I grew up in a very controlling, very, very controlling household. So Seduced is a 4-episode docuseries on Stars, mainly about India's experience, but also just really explaining how cults work, how you get enrolled, why you would even want to join, and what impact those groups can have, and how common they are, and how to heal from it. Very exciting, very challenging, very emotional for me. So life now feels completely different, I have to be honest. I feel much more in my power, and I feel like I'm just starting to discover that, because I'm not running away from anything if I feel something, and I'm not trying to look for solutions in somebody or in something outside of me. I try to look within. I'm painting, I'm doing a YouTube channel now, which I'm really excited about. I'm really going the route of, content creator, what they call it today, even though for me, I'm just being my artistic self. I'm in development of writing a movie, so I feel like I definitely turned the corner. If you know somebody you feel like who is in a cult-like dynamic, don't go to them and tell them right away, you're crazy, you're brainwashed, you're this, you're that. Try to understand them, like, what are their fears? What are they getting from that group or that dynamic that they don't think that it can give themselves? Do you feel like you're unworthy? Do you feel like you're unlovable? Why do you feel like you can't ask for these things? So you can be actually a supportive person, an understanding person, not a judgmental person, because that will put somebody off. Because we try to get things in the most effed up way. Thank you so much for listening to my story. My name is Debora, and I really hope that you find yourself. You're only living now.